Johnson, and I'm the founder and president of Divorce Right. And we provide training for HR professionals and company supervisors. And we provide divorce coaching and case management, providing guidance and direction that your divorcing employees so desperately need. Divorce is a huge disruptor, not only to the employee going through it, but to the company they work for. And our coaches have a unique perspective on divorce. They have a deep understanding of the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce, and they can handle even the highest conflict of cases with compassion and professionalism. Our coaches are trained to look at the entire picture, helping your employees make good decisions based upon their goals and their expectations. So, if you're an HR benefits manager or an HR benefits provider or consultant, please reach out to us and see if adding our suite of solutions is a good fit for your business. And a reminder, we have SHRM credits for SHRM members, and we'll be posting a link at the end of this broadcast so that you can be sure to grab those. And I want to introduce you to Paulette Rigo. She is not only my friend, she's my colleague, and she's an incredible certified divorce coach and mediator, and is one of the best in the business, and is the director of coaching and case management here at Divorce Right. And together, we're talking today about domestic violence and how, as employers, you can recognize it and get the right resources to your employees as quickly and as effectively as possible with our special guest today, Beverly Price. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Beverly. Beverly has her MBA, and she is also the owner of Her Empowered Divorce and has helped thousands of women with her 30 plus years of divorce coaching experience by providing knowledge, support, and insight to empower those going through the divorce process before, during, and after. She herself has a personal history of co-parenting, domestic violence, multiple divorces, being a single mother, and more. She partners with other top divorce professionals to form a divorce team that delivers the best support to her clients. Her coaching process includes extensive preparation, legal and financial education, emotional management and communication styles, empowerment, and support. Beverly is also the creator of the Divorce Coalition, a group of 65 plus top podcast hosts, bloggers, and divorce professionals dedicated to bringing understanding, healing, and resilience to the forefront, ending the cycle of divorce, of abuse, one survivor at a time. Welcome, Beverly. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Vicki. Hi, Vicki. Hi, Paulette. Hi, audience. Great to be here.
So good to see you and so good to have you here. Paulette, I am going to turn it over to you to kick us off.
Well, Beverly, I'm so glad you're here too. I know November was Domestic Violence or Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month. And so now we're almost, can't believe it, midway into December.
Right.
We haven't forgotten this topic. We need to keep going with this. This is a huge disruptor and problem in the home and out. So I know what the Divorce Coalition is because when you
remember, and so is Vicki.
You reached out to me, I think it was last summer, about this brainchild you had and asked if I would be willing to be kind of on that initial board. I was like, count me in. But for those that are listening live or on the recording that don't know what the Divorce Coalition is, perhaps you can enlighten all with what is it, and tell us the story about why it's so important.
Absolutely. Well, in the divorce space, there are many, many podcasts. There are many, many bloggers. There's tons of attorneys and financial professionals and coaches and so on. And so the idea was, since many of us promoted and did podcast episodes on domestic violence and abuse, what if we came together and united our reach and shared a message so that the message would be stronger than the sum of our parts? So our overall goal, we started in September in the planning. Our initial goal was to heavily promote awareness of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. My personal passion is to take that a step beyond and create change in the domestic abuse space. I don't want it to just be about awareness. I want it to be some type of change. And you typically hear somebody say, well, if I can touch one woman and make a difference with her, then we're successful. Well, we have already had numerous emails of women in their stories, and men too, to talk about the impact of domestic violence and divorce on their lives, their employers, and the lives of their children. So that's kind of what we are, and that's how it came to be. Part of my personal passion is that I am a survivor myself of multiple types of abuse, and there wasn't necessarily the help available back when I encountered that in my marriage and divorce. So I want to do something to change the face of what victims experience, what organizations need, and how we carry that message forward.
And it's growing. I recall initially it was maybe 10 or 12. And then the next conversation I had with you, you'd be like, oh, we're up to 20. And then I know it was up to 40. And I was like, whoa. And now I think you said 65 or how many?
Yeah, and we've actually just added 3 more. So it's growing and growing.
Right. Catching on, shall we say, right?
Yes.
Like you said, if we have blogs and podcasts and radio shows and newsletters and articles and followers, it spreads like wildfire, but in a good way, and getting that word out.
Absolutely. We even have a page on our website. We call it the Podcast Hub, and we bring together episodes and blogs of all different individuals in the divorce space, the top podcast hosts, the top bloggers, and we put them all in one page. So someone doesn't have to go to 20 different podcasts to learn about domestic abuse. They can come to this one location and find out about all the different types and also what resources are there to help them.
Right. It's like a little encyclopedia resource guide for people to have that alphabetized list, or if they're looking for a certain topic, something in particular they're looking to learn about, or a resource to be able to get help in the area. So, of course, we want to shift the main part of this about domestic violence itself. But can you give us the statistics or some recent findings about just how prevalent domestic violence is? I don't think most people know how common it is.
Yes. The most recent statistics that are published is 1 out of 3 women experience some type of domestic abuse or intimate partner violence. A lot of people wonder what's the difference between domestic violence, domestic abuse, and intimate partner violence. And the intimate partner violence is actually an expanded kind of classification, because there are a lot of relationships where there may not be a marriage involved, or it may be some other intimate relationship, that domestic violence still can be very prevalent. In terms of men, we don't want to forget men that are abused. The latest statistic that I saw was 1 out of 10 men have experienced some type. And I think it's well noted that the shame levels involved with being a victim vary. For men, it's extremely high. I mean, most of us know, and I as a survivor know, there's a lot of shame. But for a man, that shame's even greater. There's also the phenomenon of top executives in companies, people that have MBAs, have training, have senior jobs. As victims, their shame is, I should have known better. I'm smarter. I'm educated. I'm embarrassed. I don't want anybody to know. So in those cases, it becomes more of a challenge, because the people feeling that shame don't want to reach out for help for people to know.
Right.
And
this isn't supposed to happen to me. I'm an
Exactly.
right.
I should have known better.
Wow.
I was just going to say, it's important to have that definition of just what domestic violence or domestic abuse is, right? That,
Mhm.
it isn't always the black eye or the broken
Exactly.
bone. It can be those things, and
Mhm.
those are very important to point out. But can you just touch on the different varieties or types of what we would consider what domestic abuse and domestic violence encapsulates?
Paulette, you are so on target, and I am so passionate about this that my phrase is, but he didn't hit me.
Oh,
That there are so many other things. In court, it's difficult to prove domestic violence without pictures of bruising and so forth.
Or hospital records and doctor medical records.
Exactly. Now, all the other types of abuse become much harder to prove, to show. Um, so that's an element that kind of works into it. But I like the word domestic abuse or intimate partner abuse rather than violence, because even though domestic violence encapsulates so many of the types of abuse, I think the word violence in it makes people think it's just a physical problem.
right.
Now, there's so many other things. There is emotional abuse, there is mental abuse, there is verbal abuse, there is religious abuse, there is financial abuse, which is huge, legal abuse, and post separation abuse, to name a few. And there's much more than that. You'll hear the term coercive control.
Right.
And at the root of coercive control, and coercive control kind of envelops all the kinds of abuse, but the foundation is built on power and control. When someone is looking to control over you in any one of the areas I mentioned, that is coercive control. So you could say there's domestic abuse, there's intimate partner abuse, and then there's coercive control. And in many cases, you might hear people interchange those.
Mm. Beautiful definition. It's important that people don't just see it as a black eye and a broken bone.
Absolutely. And I think the other element is, particularly when you're talking about financial abuse, legal abuse, and post separation abuse, these can keep occurring in life after divorce, after a
Mhm.
relationship ends. So it isn't just the incident of being hit, and it has a beginning and an end when you leave an abuser, but these other forms can last. The other element that is very threatening is if a woman or a man who is a victim doesn't take the time to look at themselves and look at their spouse and find out what the connection was of why they were attracted to it, why they stayed, they may be doomed to repeat the same mistakes through multiple relationships. And that was actually my personal history. Is I went from one to the other without stopping to analyze why I was attracted to this type of person. In
Right.
many cases, an abuser does what we call love bombing and gives you initially, they become everything you've dreamed of. And then in my case, I'm married, and it was like the next day, everything changed because the abuser knew he had me.
Mhm.
And that's when the abuse started. In some cases, that becomes very difficult to analyze and prevent from happening because many of these abusers are very skilled. They seek out a certain type of person, they behave in a certain way, they kind of bring you in with their control, and then they have you.
Mm.
Yes, they're very charming. They're very, very
Yeah.
charming. And I also fall into that category. So I understand that whole narcissistic control. My own personal story is that I've always been a rescuer, right? So there's
Mhm,
always been I'll help you with that. I can help
mhm,
you that. Well, that's my ego talking, right?
Mhm.
And right, and it's I can't help you. You have to help yourself. And
Exactly.
right, and and one of the things that I'm actually going through with a client right now is legal abuse of the system
Very
of
much.
divorce,
Mhm.
and that is, I mean, that can destroy you financially.
And emotionally. I have a client whose spouse is creating multiple emotions in their divorce, and he strategically has those emotions delivered to her at 4:30 p.m. on Fridays when she can't get a hold of her attorney to explain what this is. So the natural feeling is a reaction of, I'm a victim, he's attacking me, oh my God. So what I do with my clients is we literally walk through that motion, and we start to understand and look at it almost as a game, that this is who he is. We know he's going to do this. Let's play a game and figure out when he's going to do it next, how many times, and what it's going to be. And so when you shift your mindset from this is an attack to something a bit more positive that you have more control of, it
Right.
moves you a few baby steps out of that victim role.
So if Beverly, in the case, we are working with employers and their employees, and what I love about this conversation is that we, first of all, thank you for putting a face and stepping forward and taking the shame out of this. It's
Mhm.
really, first of all, it's hard to do.
Mhm.
It is not something that everybody can do.
Mhm.
And so I honor you for that, and thank you for taking the shame out of it and saying, "Hey, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody."
Yeah,
Right?
and don't forget the safety element. In addition to shame, there can be such intense violence or abuse that that person isn't safe to leave, isn't safe to do things, or may be so beaten down that they can't get out of it themselves. They say it takes 7 times for a victim to attempt to leave before they actually do. And 70% of women who are abused that decide to leave their spouse are murdered when they leave.
What? Say that again?
70% of women who leave their abuser without a safety plan and without preparation are the victims in homicides.
Wow. So it's
Right.
really important, employers out there, to get your employees resources so that they
Absolutely.
can move forward. So
Mhm.
let me ask you, what type of resources would be out there? And maybe let's go back real quickly, because it's hard. It's one thing that Paulette was talking about, the black eye, right? The
Right.
bruised arms, coming into work, in the summertime, all wrapped up so that nothing shows.
Mhm.
That's one way to see physical abuse. What do you think are some of the signs that show up in the workplace that maybe we can trigger for an employer?
Sure. Well, here's some emotional signs of a victim. They may have a lot of anxiety or agitation. They may have problems with sleeping, too much or not enough, which then affect how they perform at work. They may try and self medicate with drugs or alcohol, which we know can have a very nasty effect on workplace productivity. They might become extremely meek or apologetic, not speaking up for themselves, not defending themselves. They may lose interest in daily activities, are fearful all the time, have depression, and worst case, even talking about suicide. But in the workplace and also out of the workplace, if you're not the victim, if you're a friend or an associate, here's some things to look for. This person becomes incredibly reserved and distant. Their behavior shifts. It's almost like you've heard that term wallflower. They melt into the background.
Mhm.
They start to isolate themselves. The abuser also isolates them. They cut them off from friends and family members, and that's all about tightening the circle of control by the abuser.
Mhm.
Then the victim has no support, has nobody to talk to, has no outlet. Another thing you could notice is they can cancel appointments or meetings with you at the very last minute. They can drop out of activities they usually would enjoy. Let's say they were a member of a book club or a yoga class or something, and all of a sudden they cut off all external activities. They really exhibit intense privacy concerns about their personal life. They don't want anybody to know that anything's bad. They will always present a front to the outside world that is opposite than their inside world. And then another employer productivity element is they're often late to work.
Right.
So, but kind of the common thing under all of those is intense fear.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, on so many levels.
Yep.
Another client that I was working with a while ago had financial control. That
Ooh.
was this gentleman it was unbelievable how she had absolutely no access, had no idea what they had, what she could spend it on. I mean, everything was permission.
Absolutely. And that's another ultimate sign of control. One of the aspects that hurts even more is that many of us as women for generations were raised to think women aren't good at math, boys are good at math. Women aren't good with finances, men are good. Women handle more passive things, more in the home things, more taking care of the children. The man is the big knowledge base. And so when you walk into a situation and you already feel less than as a person, then you feel less than competent financially. And maybe you don't have a college degree. Maybe you don't understand finances. Maybe nobody even taught you how to use a checkbook.
Right.
So you walk into it thinking, okay, he knows better. I'll give it to him. And then, as you said, they can literally control the entire pocketbook, give them a very small allowance, check every receipt that they bring in, not let them have access to online banking, online investments, not let them see any paper statements. So when you go into a divorce, typically one of the first things you have to do is create a financial affidavit, and you have to show financial information for both spouses. Well, guess what? If you're the victim of financial abuse, how much information are you going to have? You may not even have access to your tax returns. Or another thing that can happen is the husband is signing your name for you, so you don't even know accounts and properties and loans that they have taken out in your name.
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredibly insidious. And when we talked a little bit earlier about women that are extremely educated and very knowledgeable in some cases, and that are the breadwinner, they are worried about emasculating their husbands. So part of what they do is they turn over all the finances to the husband. I had a client that went for divorce and mediation didn't work, so they subpoenaed his financial records. And what he had been doing was transferring assets to his mother, buying properties in his mother's name, And she woke up and was totally bankrupt. Now, talk about the shame and the stupidity that someone would feel. Again, I should know better. And complicate that with this person was a CFO of a company. Yeah. Abuse is so insidious. And one of my passions is that we condone abuse by our silence, whether we actually observe a victim or whether we're just a spectator to abuse in the world. If someone's being abused in public, do we ever go up to that person and offer to help? If a friend comes to us and tell them they're abused, do people say, oh, you just need to try harder in the marriage. You just need to be nicer to him. So an incredible element that's important is a support system that is positive. You do not want any support system that is negative. And this can happen heavily in heavily religious families, where they're saying, no matter what happens, you need to stay in that marriage and work it out. So there's all kinds of things going on, but finding a positive support system, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a best friend, watch out for family members, because a lot of times they give advice that's well-intentioned, but they don't understand and know.
Right. I think that this is something that I think that after this conversation, we can all see that having an expert on your team, expert to go to, even if you're in HR, and this is something that you feel is outside of your comfort zone, which I understand it's probably outside of most of their comfort zones. Please reach out
You
to
understand too that for the people going through this at home feels less. Home feels confusing and painful and stressful. So work to many people feels like a safe haven. It feels like that safe place, that outlet that they can be normal, right? They can breathe. And so they may be a little bit more cautious about sharing what's going on. But if they have a rapport and they feel that there is a resource or a safe container where they can get help, they're more likely to get the help that they need versus wearing, like you said, they're overachievers and they wear that everything's perfect, right? Because so don't feel, if you are in HR and you're the business owner, you just may be that one person that's able to change their life and make it this better, because they do see work as a positive place for them to let their hair down and be normal, because they can't do that at home.
Well, and they're safe. They're, physically at least, they're safe at work, right?
Exactly.
Not necessarily. When I was in HR, I had a situation where an employee was in a physically abusive situation, and her abuser tracked her down to her workplace. He hadn't known where you work. And a big element of a victim moving on is safety and not letting the abuser know where you are. This abuser came up to the floor she worked on. Luckily, we had a heads up and we took her to a safe place, a room where she couldn't be found, and no one was going to tell that abuser. We also then had security escort him out. So you need to be careful that the abuser can barrage the victim with physical visits, phone calls, emails, texts, that again make people go crazy. And then the other thing I was thinking about when we were talking about financial abuse from an employee retention standpoint is that abusers may want the victim to quit their job or to downgrade their job as another form of control.
Yes,
keeping them home.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because that way that victim doesn't have her own source of money, which the abuser fears greatly, because if she has her own source of money, she has the means to leave him.
Right. Exactly right.
So there's just so many ways it affects a workplace that's almost kind of swept under the rug. You know, have you ever heard an employer say, leave your personal problems at home?
Yeah. Oh, yes, which is part of the problem, right?
Exactly. So it is a personal problem that can't just be left at home. That
You know,
has
you're
great
exactly, yes.
implications.
Yeah,
And it's exactly, that case where, you know, how can you leave something at home when it is a part of who you are 100% of the time?
Yeah,
Even
and if you're stalked and
Yeah.
harassed,
you
yeah.
know, in this industry, one of the reasons, 10% of divorcing employees quit in the
Mhm.
first year. And the number one reason that they quit is because they are unsupported and cared for at work. That's the number one
Mhm.
reason. So when you said that, all of a sudden I remembered, somebody talking to us about leave your divorce at home. Don't bring that crap here. Well, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the divorce industry. And those are the times when you've got to work with your attorneys. That's when you've got to go to a court, your mandatory appearances before the judge, right? That's when you have to provide your evidence. That's when you have to give them the documentation that you need.
Right.
So it's really hard to make that process, two different ones, home versus work. And I'm hopeful that now we are advancing to the point where people start to understand that personal problems at home are a part of the whole employee and can't be disseminated.
Absolutely.
Right? It can't be broken down.
24% of divorces are caused by domestic violence. So if you think about that, you have this hit to productivity just from a divorce, add on top of it the lack of productivity and retention from a domestic violence related divorce. So
Right.
you have, just a ripple effect. You had asked me earlier what resources are available to people. Obviously, the first one, it could be an EAP program if
Right.
they work. The national hotline, thehotline.org, is a great resource. There you can learn about things. You can talk to somebody that's been through it. You can learn about a safety plan. Many people have to plan a year or more out before they leave their abuser so they can save money and get their safety plan and get their roots and things like that. And then another resource is your local domestic violence shelter.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to be extremely careful of is your use of technology during this period. Your abuser can come in and look at your search history on your computer.
Right.
They can come in and look at your phone calls on your phone. They can look at your texts. So you have to be very, very careful. You may want to go to a library and use that computer. You may want to create a separate email that there's no way they know anything. But the one additional thing we haven't touched on is the long-term implications of someone that has children with an abuser, because the abuser just doesn't come in and out of their life. It's co-parenting abuse and it's post-separation abuse. So that can last long after the divorce and can also have a negative impact on the children.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Beverly, we could go on about this
We could.
so much. And so we have a comment from Diane Moore. I love this. Please let us know if this is recorded. Yes, it will be, and we will put it up on our website for sure. Thank you. Yeah, financial abuse is horrible. We agree 100%.
And Diane, please consider joining us on the Divorce Coalition to move this forward.
Yes, please. And I am going to put that website up one last time before we go, so that you all can find out about it. If you're an employer and you need support with a divorcing employee that's going through some sort of abuse, whether that's, financial, legal, emotional, you name it. I mean, we've named so many here that are beyond just not just, and that was a wrong word to use, but beyond physical abuse.
Absolutely.
And that's what we all think about, but it's not the only thing that's out there, and it's not the only thing that your employees are dealing with. So, Beverly, thank you so much. I want to remind everybody that we do have those SHRM credits for everybody today, and I'm going to put that up here so you guys can grab those. Let me see if I don't have the links. I'm going to put it up here right now. If you need to get your SHRM credits for this, please feel free to fill out this form and get your SHRM credit for this this time. Beverly, an amazing conversation, an important one, and a life-changing one. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, everybody. Next week, we're going to be talking about, we've talked about narcissists here, we've kind of glossed over that term, but next week, we're going to be talking about divorcing a narcissist with somebody that wrote a wonderful book by Tracy Malone, How to Divorce a Narcissist. You can't make this shit up. That is literally the name of the book. I love it. We're going to be talking about how they entangle your employees into just a big old mess. And we want to help your employees do that. If we can help you or your employees go through this, we are here for them. Please reach out to us. We are here to guide them and direct them so that they can make the best decisions for their future. And we welcome you to join us next week. And Paulette, thank you so much for joining us on this call. Always love your input and your comments, and we thank you so much. Beverly, thank you again, and we will see you on the Divorce Coalition. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.